Hi, it's Steph, and I'm at Lowe's, and they have a bunch of new perennials, annuals, trees, shrubs, and evergreens, as well as a Memorial Day sale. So let's go ahead and take a look at the May inventory at Lowe's. Check out this Nephofia, or red hot poker. Now it's called red hot poker, but the colors can vary. This particular one happens to be a really pretty yellow. They come in shades of orange. I've even seen a chartreuse green that looks like a lime color. Really beautiful. Coral ones that have almost like an ombre effect. These are really like tall and statement plants in the garden. And even when they're not in bloom, you get this really pretty foliage at the bottom. So it almost looks like an ornamental grass. Now this one here is a proven winners variety, and it is called the Pyromania Solar Flare. It likes full sun. It gets to be 36 to 42 inches in height, and you can see in the photo there how pretty that is. And it's a perennial. And this one gets 36 to 42 inches in height with the bloom spikes. It needs 24-inch spacing, and it is hardy in zones 6 through 9 or down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And it blooms early to midsummer. And this container here is a 1 gallon for $15.98. Some pretty low growing grasses. Now these look really pretty in the front of a border, and this is a sedge, and the variety is called Evergold Japanese Sedge. It likes part sun. If you have these in too much sun, they can start to burn and sort of look unsightly. Let's see here. It's an ornamental grass grown for texture and seasonal interest, and look how pretty it moves in the wind. Now this one here is a zone 5. It is hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 16 inches in height by 16 inches in width. And I find that these are pretty deer resistant in my garden, but it's possible that bunnies might munch on them. But these are really beautiful for texture and movement in the garden. And check out these beautiful succulents. These are the Sempervibum hens and chicks. And look how gorgeous these are. Now these multiply pretty well. You'll have the main plant and then a bunch of babies that come off of it. And the colors on these are amazing. They almost look like they're fake, don't they? Gorgeous. Now, if you have a rock garden or you don't like to water all that often and you want a garden that is water wise and that can be on its own, drought resistant, this is a great option. Any kind of sedum will like a dry, well draining soil in full sun location. So this hens and chicks here is a full sun plant. It's a mounding perennial, so it comes back year after year. These are in the Lowe's containers for $8.98, and they are very hardy. A lot of the sedums are hardy and down to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets to be 6 inches in height and 6 inches in width, but it will spread. And it doesn't really need fertilizing. In fact, I find that if you fertilize sedums, they can get floppy. Probably not the case in these that are really low growing, almost like ground cover types, but in the taller ones, like the Autumn Joy sedum, you probably want to stay away from fertilizing those. That is how they start to flop in the center. That and lack of light are the two reasons that can happen. One of my favorite ornamental landscape grasses, the Karl Forester Calamagratis reed grass. This is a really nice, compact, tall, and well-behaved garden ornamental grass. You can see here that it is just green, and they're pretty compact. I'll give you the size on them. They get anywhere from about 4 feet to 5 feet in height and only about 3 feet or so in diameter. So really well-behaved in my garden. And then they'll send up these plumes, which are their blooms, these feathery plumes here. Just really pretty. So what happens is you end up getting all of the foliage or the green blades at the bottom, and then these really pretty plumes that kind of look like straw coming up the center of the plant. They make a really great impact planted in groups. Here are the specs on the Karl Forester grass. It is an ornamental grass grown for texture and seasonal interest. It likes full sun. These are 1.5 gallons for $14.98, and it says here that they're hardy down to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And the size says that it's an average of 5 foot in height by 5 foot in width. I would say that the height is pretty accurate, but in terms of the width, I haven't seen them get much wider than say 3 to 4 feet. That's been my experience. And another pretty variety of grass, and this one is maiden grass zebra. And what's interesting about this one is that it has a striping effect on the foliage. This one does get much larger than the Karl Forester. So this ornamental grass is $22.98. This looks like it's at about a 1.5 to 2 gallon as well. It likes full sun, and this one here gets 8 feet in height by 6 feet in width. So this one you can plant as a standalone, and it'll make quite an impact in the garden. And it's hardy down to a zone 4 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. You can actually see the zebra striping on the foliage here. See that? Very pretty. Makes an interesting grass in the landscape. And some purple fountain grass. Now this one is beautiful, but I have to tell you, even though it is labeled as a perennial, this is not a perennial. This is an annual. So you want to be really careful about purchasing these purple fountain grasses, the Pentacetum rubrum, because you will think that it'll come back every year in this beautiful purple color. And at least here in my zone 6, it does not return. It is considered annual. And I've made that mistake before, which is why I know and I'm sharing it with you. So it is only hardy to a zone 9. So again, I'm in a zone 6. This is only hardy to a zone 9, which means that this would only be an annual for me here in my zone. It says non-hardy in zones 1 through 8. These get to be 4 to 5 feet in height and 4 to 5 feet in width. They are beautiful. Look at this color, this dark red maroon color with these red plumes. Gorgeous. And they'll carry you all the way from spring, summer, and fall. Okay, these make a beautiful transition into fall, and you can use these either in a container as a centerpiece or even in the landscape, and that you would dig it out at the end of the season. But really pretty. They have some peonies here at my store. This one is called Happy Salmon, and it's already bloomed out. But $29.98 for these. It looks like a 2-gallon container of the herbaceous peonies. Now these are beautiful plants. They can handle part shade to full sun. They do have nice foliage that will stay this way most of the season. If you start to see the foliage go bad, you just want to cut it down as quickly as you can so it doesn't kind of spread and cause like a fungal disease to the foliage into the plant. But in general, they do stay a pretty nice foliage plant even after the blooms are done. This one here still has a nice bud, and a lot of times you'll see ants crawling on the buds of your peonies. There's nothing wrong. That is part of the process. The ants are there to feed on the nectar, and shortly thereafter, your peony will bloom. This variety here is called Kansas peony. It almost looks like a fuchsia red. And there's a few different varieties here. Kansas peony almost looks like the Carl Rosenfeld. Shirley Temple peony. This is a beautiful one. I actually have this one in my garden. It's like an off-white, and in the center you get a tiny bit of a pink blush coloring. Really pretty. Peonies need a good amount of space. Most of them get anywhere from 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, so give them some room. They also require some staking because the blooms are so heavy. When you plant your peonies, expect that when they start popping through the soil in the spring, when you start seeing the eyes come through the soil, put up a support. You can do that with some bamboo, with some string. You can also buy the cages that have like a grid pattern in them for them to grow through. It's really helpful. So the herbaceous peonies require some staking. Then there's the Ito peonies that are a little bit more sturdy, and then the tree peonies that are the sturdiest. Look at this one, Happy Maroon Peony. So quite a few different varieties that I've never seen before. I've never heard of this maroon one, the Kansas one, so pretty cool. Salvias are one of those foundational or staple perennials in the garden. They're pest resistant, nothing touches them, the deer don't touch them, the rabbits don't touch them, and they're just a really good workhorse perennial. So these here are proven winners. They like full sun. Salvia is a perennial, this variety. There is annual salvias, but this one is a perennial. And the height on this one gets to be 16 to 20 inches in height. It needs 16-inch spacing, and it is hardy in zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it blooms late spring into early summer. And if you shear these back after their first flush of blooms, you just go ahead and deadhead them, cut them back. They will send up a secondary flush of blooms. Another quintessential perennial for a cottage garden or any perennial border really is the daisy. Look how pretty these are. These are also proven winners, and these are the Amazing Daisies Daisy May. And this container here is a 1 gallon for $15.98. They're all budded up and already starting to bloom here. And let's see how tall they are. So this variety here gets to be a medium height at 12 to 24 inches in height and needs 10-inch spacing, it says, and they're hardy in zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they bloom early summer through late summer. Such a beautiful flower. Some Baptisia, also known as false indigo. Now this one is not blooming yet, but it is in tight bud form. This is a plant that in my experience doesn't bloom very long, but even the foliage is absolutely beautiful. It has this blue-gray coloring, and it looks really pretty used in cut flower arrangements. Almost looks like eucalyptus in my opinion. Now this variety here is the Decadence Sparkling Sapphires. You can see it has a bloom, spike type bloom that is blue. These are $15.98 for a 1 gallon size, and they like full sun. They also have a really deep taproot, so wherever you decide to plant them, just make sure you like that spot because they can be really difficult to move, and if you do move it, you could risk losing it. So just something to keep in mind. These are also native plants here in the Northeast, so just a really great perennial. And check out this really pretty sedum. Beautiful burgundy color on the foliage. This is a Monrovia plant and it is called Sun Sparkler Firecracker. It likes full sun. These are $10.98 and they look like they would be pretty low growing. So let's check it out. They are deer resistant. They want 6+ hours of direct sun, low water once established, as is the case with most sedums. They're like a succulent, so they like low water. And they bloom summer and fall. So the height looks like it's 6 to 8 inches in height, 16 to 18 inches in width, and they're hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And here are some larger containers of a purple salvia. Now this is the variety I actually grow in my garden. It has a really deep purple. It is beautiful. And it is the May Night Salvia. This one here likes full sun. Mine has multiplied so well. I've been able to divide it a bunch of times. This 1.5 gallon container for $15.98. And it blooms spring, summer, and fall. I can keep deadheading mine and keep it coming back with more blooms. The first bloom cycle is the most prolific, and then the subsequent ones, you don't get as many blooms, but you still keep it blooming throughout the season. And I have a video on my channel of how I do that, how I prune my salvia for continual blooms. It is hardy down to a zone 4 or -20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 18 inches in height and 18 inches in width. They are deer resistant. Deer and rabbit do not like the scent and texture of salvia, so they stay away. Now, I will tell you, when these bloom in my garden, they make such a statement because they are full size now. They're mature. They look really beautiful in the front of my border. A stilbe. Now they have this in full sun here. It's probably the wrong spot for these because they like part shade and shade situations. And this is a great plant that will produce blooms even in shade. They are gorgeous. They have these tall bloom spikes of these plumy blooms that for me in my zone 6 garden will bloom sometime in the middle to end of June. They have a really pretty kind of like ferny foliage. And what's great about these is that they're pretty disease resistant and pest resistant. The deer don't touch them, the bunnies don't touch them, and I've never had any issues with powdery mildew or anything. The leaves always look beautiful, even after they're done blooming. They are heavy feeders, so to keep your astilbe blooming with these beautiful plume blooms, you want to make sure that you feed them with a good all-purpose fertilizer at the end of winter, beginning of spring, and they also like a good amount of moisture, so a moist but well-draining soil. So if you give them fertilizer and water, you'll keep them happy with these beautiful blooms. Now this variety here is the unique cerise astilbe. It's a beautiful fuchsia, matches the container here. This is a 1.5 gallon for $15.98. It says that it likes shade, and I would say shade or part shade. If you do grow them in any kind of sun, it would have to be a few hours of only morning sun, as it's a little bit weaker. Afternoon sun, they will crisp. And they say that they bloom in spring and summer. And these here are hardy to a zone 3, so very hardy, down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. They get to be 12 to 16 inches in height and 14 to 18 inches in width. And some lavender. Now lavender not only smells amazing, but it also has this really pretty blue-gray, fuzzy textured foliage. The pests stay away from it because they don't like the fragrance or the texture. The only thing that you should know about lavender is that it needs a very well-draining soil in full sun. If it sits in any kind of water, it can rot at the crown and then you'll lose your plant. So this one here is called the Anouk Purple Crown Lavender. It likes full sun. It will bloom in spring and summer. These are $15.98 for their 1.5 gallon. And they're hardy down to a zone 6 or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. They get to be 10 inches in height, 12 to 18 inches in width. I've had mine. I have a English lavender called Munstead, and it has done really well for me. I've had it for several years. Another really beautiful vertical interest plant that gives you that spike type of bloom. If you like this type of structure in the garden, you can sort of stagger the types of perennials that you're growing so that you always have a vertical element such as this in the garden with all of your other perennials. So for example, you can grow some salvia, you can grow some lupin, and you can also grow some speedwell veronica, which is what this beautiful plant is here. You can see here that the veronica is just starting to color up, and there are a ton of bloom spikes on this plant. These are again the 1.5 gallon containers for $15.98. Now don't be afraid to divide these right out of the container. You can get at least 2 plants out of it. Whenever you divide a plant, you just want to ensure that you prepare a really good planting hole, maybe with some startup fertilizer. Transplant or divide on an overcast day or in the evening once the sun has gone down and it's starting to get cooler. That will prevent as much shock to the plant. Keep it well watered and shaded until it starts establishing and putting out roots, and then you've given yourself 2 plants instead of 1. And this one here, the Royal Candle Speedwell Veronica, is a full sun plant. It has it's an upright perennial. It blooms in spring and summer, and they are hardy down to a zone 4 or -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. They get to be 12 to 24 inches in height and 12 inches in width. These look really pretty, planted in groups of 3, 5, and so forth. Look at these beautiful ready refill containers with coleus. These are for shade. Gorgeous. What a wonderful way to add such a vibrant color to a shady spot in the garden. Now these are annuals, and coleus are also super easy to take cuttings of them, put them in water and root them, and then you have more plants. These are the types of containers that you just drop into one of your decorative planters. So this one here says that it fits a 13.3 decorative planter. So you just take this, drop it right in, and you have an instant container for the season. Beautiful. Has this spike plant in the center. This is a Dracaena and a coleus. $21.98 for these. And again, these like shade. If you do have them in sun, even though it says full sun, there are some coleuses that can take more sun. I would say a morning sun would be a bit better. Now these definitely like sun because these are tropicals. You have some hibiscus here and something in the center there. It looks like it could be a dark Dracaena. It doesn't look like cordyline. Let's see if it tells us. Nope, it doesn't. But it is by Costa Farms. This is a medium size. It says it fits an 11.7 decorative planter. These are $31.98, and you get these pretty tropical looking hibiscus blooms with this Dracaena in the center. Lots of buds on this one as well. And then this one here has some geranium, which can take part sun. Some geraniums can take a little bit more sun than others, but it has a really pretty fuchsia color. There's also some in that orangey red and red as well. And these fit 11.7 inch containers. $16.98 for the geraniums with the Dracaena spike in the center. So if you're a person who really likes containers but want to take the trouble out of arranging plants, these ready fill, drop in a bloom type things are a great option. They even have some with the Calibrachoa and the petunias. This one here has this little blue flower. The name's escaping me at the minute, but it'll come to me eventually. But it also has some Calibrachoa. It's not lantana. It starts with an L. You're probably saying it, and I can't. It's not coming to my brain at the moment, but it will. We'll get back to that. Some really pretty combinations here. It's lobelia. As soon as I walked away, I remembered. So that pretty blue flower is lobelia. Here are some anemones. Now these, keep in mind that even though they say they're perennial, they are a spring blooming plant. So if you pick this up and you bring it home, even though it's in bloom now, it'll peter out when the weather starts getting warmer. But it may return for you next spring. Just remember that even though the foliage looks a little bit weedy, almost like you're growing parsley, put a little tag there so you know if it comes up next year that it is a anemone. I have actually planted these in my garden before, and it sometimes comes back and sometimes doesn't. So I don't know that it's entirely hardy here for us in our zone 6. It says that it is hardy in, let's see, 10 to 0 degrees. So it's possible that it's only marginally hardy here. And some ladies' mantle. These are starting to get their bloom buds. These have a beautiful chartreuse colored bloom, and even the foliage is stunning. Look at that. When it rains, they hold on to water droplets so beautifully. You can see that a little bit right there. So pretty. Let's see what variety this is. So this one here is the Thriller Ladies Mantle. It blooms in spring and summer. It's a mounding perennial. It likes shade, so 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. These are $8.98, and they're hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And they get to be 8 inches in height and 10 inches in width. They are gorgeous. I absolutely love these. They pair so nicely with things like underplanted with roses. Just really pretty combination. And some Hasta, another plant that offers a lot of beautiful color interest in a shady spot in the garden. Something to note about Hasta, though, is that they are deer salad. So if you deal with a lot of deer, you'd have to protect them. They also deal with some issues in terms of pests like slugs. But look at this beautiful foliage. So pretty. Let's check out some of the varieties that they have available. This one here is called Minuteman Hasta, and it looks like it has a smaller leaf with green and the white, creamy white outer margins here. It is $19.98. It's a pretty large container. Looks like a 1.5 to 2 gallons, and It's difficult to check out these tags when they're stapled here, but it looks like it gets 18 to 24 inches in height and 18 to 24 inches in width. And Hasta are really hardy. This one down to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It's very similar in appearance to, say, the Patriot Hasta in terms of the green and white coloring. Now, there are a lot of varieties here, so we'll just kind of quickly go through a few of them. This real beautiful one, I want to check out the name on this beauty. Let's see. Look at that leaf. So pretty. This one is called American Halo Hasta, and it likes partial sun to shade. It's a perennial. $10.98 for these containers here. And this one looks, based on the foliage, that it can get pretty large. So let's see. 22 inches in height and 60 to 70 inches in width. So you want to give this one some space. And it is hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Another pretty chartreuse colored foliage Hasta. And this one is called George Smith Hasta. And it is $10.98. It's a shade perennial. And let's see how big this one gets. 1 to 3 hours of morning sun, and it gets 20 inches in height, 40 inches in width. So also a pretty good size. Not quite as large as the last one, but still pretty good size. Hardy down to negative 30 to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Here's another really beautiful one. It has like a light green outer with a dark green in the center. Just look at the size of these leaves. Look at my hand compared to that. That is beautiful. This one here is called the Francis Williams Hasta. I actually have this one in my garden. Now that I read the name, it came to me. So $10.98 for this one as well. And this one gets to be 22 inches in height, 48 inches in width. And in terms of the hardiness and the light conditions, they all like the same light conditions. 1 to 3 hours of morning sun, so they're considered part sun, part shade, and down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. This one's a real pretty one as well. And this one here is called Barbara Ann. It has a green in the center with white on the outers. Also really large leaf. Look at that. Barbara Ann Plantain Lily. And the size on this one is 18 to 24 inches in height, 18 to 24 inches in width. So let's go ahead and look at a couple more really pretty shade plants. Here is a great option for a shade plant in a nice small container. Not only does it make it more affordable, but also easier to plant. This is the Palace Purple Coral Bell. And Coral Bell, also known as heuchera, it likes shade. It says 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. These are $5.48. They are mounding in size, or in shape rather. They make a little mound, rounded mound of foliage. And they also send up bloom spikes. And there are some on the other side that have some bloom spikes. I can show you what that looks like. But mostly they are grown for their foliage. Check out this beauty. That is gorgeous. This one is called Grape Expectations. $8.98 for this one. It likes shade, 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. And let's see how big this one gets. It's hardy to a zone 4 or negative 20 to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it gets 12 to 34 inches in height and 24 inches in width. And it says it is deer resistant. Now, something occasionally snacks on my heuchera. It could be bunnies, but they're a really beautiful foliage plant. Look at that. And the contrast against this here that looks like a Tiarella based on the shape of the plant. So let's check that out. Look at that. So beautiful together, right? Look at that combo. Here are the bloom spikes on the coral bells. You can see that they're a very thin spike type bloom. They almost look like a baby's breath. They're mostly grown for the foliage, like I said, but the blooms are pretty and the pollinators do like them. But if you don't like them, you can always just follow the plant down and cut them off. This one has a really pretty foliage as well. It's almost iridescent. This is a Monrovia variety called Frosted Violet Coral Bells. It likes part sun. It's a perennial for $13.98. It needs 1 to 3 hours of morning sun, semi-moist soil, 12 inches in height, 18 inches in width, and hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Look at this beautiful astilbe that's in bloom. This is what their bloom plumes look like. Absolutely gorgeous. See that? Atop this ferny foliage. So this variety is by Monrovia, and it is the Unique Cerise Astilbe. It's in this beautiful pink coloring. It likes shade, a perennial for $10.98. And this one here gets, let's see, 12 to 16 inches in height, 14 to 18 inches in width, and hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Gorgeous. And look how pretty all of these colors look so nice together. Look at that. You have the lady's mantle, you have the astilbe, some coral bells, and some Hasta. So what beautiful color in a shade garden with all of these pretty plants. Here's another absolute stunner when it comes to a shade garden, the Japanese painted fern. Look at that. So stunning. Now this absolutely needs a good amount of shade. I've had some Japanese painted ferns in some sun, and this is what happens when they get too much sun. They crisp up like that and they don't look quite as pretty, right? So you want to give them a good deal of shade. Almost full shade is actually best, and they get the most vibrant, almost like a pastel sage green and white with this burgundy stem in the center. Just gorgeous. So this one here is the Proven Winners Crested Surf Japanese painted fern. It says part shade to shade is what I would suggest on this one. $12.98. It is a perennial. This is a 2.5 quart size. And they grow sort of wider than they do tall. So let's check out the size. It says it's a medium height plant, 20 to 22 inches in height, and they need 28-inch spacing. They're hardy in zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're grown for their attractive foliage. This beautiful coral bell in this peachy color. Again, look at this. That color with this dark red, with this one here called Pinot Gris. So pretty. That just foliage, beautiful colors. This one here is called Magma Coral Bells, and it's a mounting perennial, $19.98. And this one here looks like it gets 18 to 24 inches in height and in width. Another absolute beauty in the shade garden, and this is the Queen of Hearts Brunnera. Look at this. So beautiful. It is a perennial. Look how large it gets. Now Brunnera also blooms in the spring. It gets a little blue bloom, and then once the blooms go away, the foliage gets much larger in this silvery color. It is stunning. What a way to light up a shady corner of the garden. And they're heart-shaped. See that? So pretty. They almost look like a caladium, don't they? So this one here, the Queen of Hearts, is $15.98 for this 1 gallon container. It's a perennial for part shade. It also likes a pretty moist but well-draining soil. I've had some in a little bit drier soil, and it hasn't done quite as well. And it's died back quite a bit in terms of size. This one here gets to be 16 to 18 inches in height. It needs 28-inch spacing, and it's hardy in zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it blooms mid-spring to late spring. Such a beauty. Look at that. Oh, here are the blooms. This one actually still has some of the blooms on it. Very similar to, say, a forget-me-not. A climbing hydrangea. These look so pretty climbing up the trunk of a tree, a side of a brick building or a garage. Just look really beautiful. Even a tall trellis. Now, they do take a really long time to get any significant size on them, at least in my experience, from friends that I have that have grown them. I would love to add one of these to my garden at some point. They like part sun, so 3 to 6 hours of morning sun. These are $34.98. It is a vine. It says that they get to be 20 feet in height and 15 feet in width, and they're hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit or a zone 5. These look nice and healthy, this foliage. This one is all budded up, so it should bloom any day now. Some endless summer hydrangeas. Now these are the quintessential macrophylla type hydrangeas. They're also known as the mop head or the big leaf hydrangeas, and this variety is called Bloomstruck. Now the thing to note about these is that a lot of times the macrophylla hydrangeas will bloom on old wood, but the endless summer variety has been bred to bloom on old wood and new wood, so you're more likely to get blooms if you have a late frost or if you improperly prune it by accident. So the other thing to note is that the color of the blooms that you get will depend on the soil that you have. So if you have a more acidic soil, they'll lean more blue, and if you have a more alkaline soil, they will be more purple pink. Now this variety here, the Bloomstruck, I think leans more purple pink in general. You can see here with the chart, it says that if you have more acidic soil, it'll be more purple. If you have more alkaline, it'll lean a little bit more pink. It likes morning sun, part shade, and it gets to be 3 to 4 feet in height and 4 to 5 feet in width. And it is hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit or zones 4 through 9. And you can see they're all budded up, and that one even has a beautiful bloom on it. These here are, let's see, a number 3 gallon container for $37.98. Now, there are some things that you can do to turn your hydrangeas blue. So if you don't naturally have acidic soil, you can use something like this product here, the Espoma Organic Soil Acidifier. It says it turns hydrangeas blue and it lowers your soil pH. There's also this variety here, the Garden Lime, that will turn your hydrangeas pink. So depending on your soil, if you do want to increase the chances of having a macrophylla type hydrangea that goes blue or pink, you can use one of these products to help the process along. It might take a couple of seasons for this to sort of build up in your soil, but it is supposed to work. Comment below if you've used this product in the past. Another variety of endless summer hydrangea, and I've never seen this one before. It looks like it's called Blushing Bride. Based on the bloom, it looks like it's going to be a white variety, which is really pretty. Look at that. And it's a reblooming hydrangea. Crisp white flowers brighten the landscape and flower arrangements alike. Big, round, beautiful blooms. This is new to me. Hardiness zones 5 through 9. It gets to be 3 to 6 feet in width and 3 to 6 feet in height. So nice compact size. Look at that. Really pretty. This is a 1 gallon container for $19.98. And another beautiful staple perennial for the garden is Nepeta, another one that has those purple spike type vertical interest blooms. Now this one is part of the mint family. It's known as Nepeta or catmint, and so the deer and rabbit stay away from it. Pairs really nicely with roses, even with like the Stelladora daylilies and other perennials. Just really pretty color. It's a mounding perennial. This one looks like it would be a shorter stature, sort of like the Cat's Pajamas by Proven Winners, which is the variety I grow in my garden. This one here, yep, it says it gets 14 to 18 inches in height and 18 to 30 inches in width. So even gets a little bit wider than the Cat's Pajamas, if I am remembering correctly. Very hardy, down to zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I absolutely love this in the front of my borders. Who else loves Nepeta? The pollinators. It's an absolute pollinator magnet and it blooms for a really long time. Mine starts in the spring and it goes all the way through the fall. And all I do is shear it back once or twice throughout the season and it'll keep producing beautiful blooms for me. And check this out. My Lowe's is having a sale on their 2.5 quart perennials. 3 for $12, and that sale is going to run from 5/16, which was yesterday, through 5/29, so right around Memorial Day. So if you're looking to add some perennials to your garden, it looks like they have quite a few varieties here at my store. We'll run through them. They have some dianthus, some of the Royal Candles Speedwell, some really beautiful columbine. This is the early bird yellow variety. I actually added some to my garden last year. It is stunning. Let's see what else. For the dianthus, they have this Everlast Orchid dianthus, and it says that it gets, 8 to 12 inches in height, 10 to 14 inches in width. Really pretty pink blooms, and that's part of the sale. Here is the Royal Candles Veronica, a purple spike type bloom. Some 2.5 quarts of the May Night Salvia is also part of this sale. Now each store is going to vary by location in terms of what plants they have available for the sale, but check it out if you're looking for some perennials. And the Walker's Low Nepeta is also available. Great deal. 3 for $12 perennials. You can't go wrong with that. Another stunning columbine. Look at this one. I love columbine. Such a beautiful spring bloom. This variety here is called Early Bird Purple Yellow. Now, how pretty would this pair with that yellow one? Gorgeous. Even some lavender as part of the sale. Look at that. Provence lavender. This smells amazing. Another stunning columbine. Look at this one. It's called Early Bird Purple Blue. So pretty. Out this combination here with this purple yellow with this yellow. So pretty. Some moonshine yarrow. Look at this beautiful blue-gray coloring, and then it'll get yellow blooms. Look at that. Moonshine yarrow likes full sun. It's an upright perennial, also known as Achillea. And these here, let's see how big this one gets. It's hardy down to a zone 4, a negative 20 to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 18 to 24 inches in height and 12 to 15 inches in spacing or width. Also part of the 3 for $12, 2.5 quart perennial sale. And they have lots of the Kimberly queen ferns here at my store. Now this is a beautiful upright fern. So the difference between the Kimberly queen fern and the Boston fern is that the Boston fern is typically seen in hanging baskets. It has more of an arching kind of hanging or cascading habit, where the Kimberly queen fern is more of an upright growth habit. Both of them like part shade. I'm actually going to say that the Kimberly queen seems to like part shade, but the Boston fern probably does better in mostly shade. Otherwise, they start to kind of crisp at the ends. They like regular watering, so keep them moist, keep them shaded. They'll be really happy throughout the season. Check out this gorgeous clematis or clematis, depending on how you say it. This is a climber, and this one is by Monrovia. It's called Toki Claus. It likes full sun, and it has early blooms. These are $24.98. So pretty, and it's loaded with buds. Now you need to give these something to climb, and there are different groups of clematis, and that is how you will know how to prune them and when to prune them. There's also different heights and different bloom times, so lots of different options when it comes to growing clematis. This particular one here is hardy in zones 4 through 9, or down to -30 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a moderate grower, and it gets to be 4 to 9 feet tall with support. So they look really beautiful growing up a trellis or even up and around an arbor. These blooms are spectacular. Look at this. So large. And the foliage looks nice and healthy. Now, clematis are heavy feeders, so you want to give them some compost and feed them early on in the season. So late winter, early spring, give them a feed with some all-purpose fertilizer and some fresh compost, and they will grow beautifully. They also like their feet shaded and their head in the sun, so you can even grow them with other perennials along the base of the plant to sort of shade the roots. A really interesting tree. This is by Monrovia, and it is called the Fort McNair Red Horse Chestnut. It likes full sun. It's a dramatic accent. It's a flowering tree, and these here look like they're in about a 5-gallon container for $109. It says that it gets 25 feet in width and 35 feet in height. Hardy in zones 5 through 9, or down to -20 to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep the soil moist but not soggy. Really interesting foliage. Look at that. It has like a serrated leaf. And these blooms from afar almost looked like a type of hydrangea bloom, almost like the pinky winky, like the shape of them. And then up closer, almost looked like a honeysuckle. It's just a really interesting blooming tree. Some more blooms here. Another really pretty perennial that's part of that 2.5 quart sale at 3 for $12. This is an Alpine Aster. It has this really sweet, ruffly bloom. Look at all those petals in this like purple pink color with a yellow center. Very similar to like the shape of a daisy. And this one here says that it blooms in spring and summer. It likes full sun. Let's see the size on it. It is hardy down to a zone 3, or -30 to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets 6 to 12 inches in height and 12 inches in width. So pretty. And some lilies, some Asiatic lilies. Now these are a bulb. They are perennial. The deer do eat these in my garden, so I do have to spray them to protect them. They're like candy to them. The same with daylilies. These do really well. Sometimes you deal with red lily beetles. I did have that happen to me several years ago. Luckily, it hasn't happened recently, although I might have just jinxed myself. But I have a variety called Tiny Dancer, which is a pink, similar to what you see there. But you can see that lilies come in lots of beautiful colors. Oranges, yellows, pinks, and even reds. Tiny Diamond by Monrovia. This is the variety I have in my garden. This is $10.98. It's a full sun perennial, 12 to 14 inches in height, 10 to 12 inches in width. They bloom in summer, and they are hardy -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. This yellow one is really pretty too, with the red speckling, if you like reds and oranges and yellows in your garden. This one is called Tiny Nugget Asiatic Lily. I'm often asked what I like to use to keep deer and rabbit away from my plants, and this is something that I use often. It is the Liquid Fence Deer and Rabbit Repellent. I find it very effective. It has a very pungent smell, but it does keep the deer and rabbit away from my plants. I usually buy this large size here because it lasts longer. It's the 1 gallon, and it's a pre-mixed concentrate, so you just shake it really well and then spray it with the nozzle. You have to apply it about every 7 to 10 days is what I do in my garden. It says that it's rain resistant, but if you get a really heavy downpour, I would reapply it after the rain. green. And I also use this one here, the deer stopper in the red bottle. This one smells a little bit better. It smells like peppermint to me, but they're very effective. And I usually alternate between different types of repellents. But I have been really liking this one here, as well as the deer stopper. I also use Plant Skid and Bobex. There's quite a few that you can use, but most recently, this one's been my go-to. I also like the granular stuff. Now this takes a little bit longer to break down. So what I do is I spray the granular around the base of the plant, and then I will spray the actual plant with this periodically as well. Check out this beautiful peony. Almost looks like a shade of red and brown, almost mauvey, just really pretty. It's called the Buckeye Bell Herbaceous Peony by Monrovia. It says that it likes full sun, great for cut flowers, and it is hardy in USDA growing zones 4 through 8. We're down to -30 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And it quickly reaches 2 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide. Really pretty one. And look at this beautiful shrub that is just about done blooming now. And you would think that this is a hydrangea based on the white round blooms. But this is actually a viburnum. And you know it's a viburnum because of when it blooms, and look at the foliage. It has this really pretty serrated foliage, almost looks like a beech tree foliage. Or even birches. Some birches have a serrated foliage like that. But these bloom earlier in the season. So if you love hydrangeas that bloom in the summer, like the panicle type hydrangeas that have large white blooms like this, or the Annabelles, and you wanted to get this color earlier in the season, a viburnum would be a great way to do that. Look at that. Gorgeous. Let's check out which variety this is. This is called the popcorn viburnum, which is pretty applicable, right? I would say that that's fitting. And it blooms in spring. It likes full part sun. It has dramatic fall color on the foliage. And let's see, it likes part to full sun, and it is hardy in zones 5 through 9, or down to -20 degrees to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And the average size quickly reaches 6 to 8 feet tall and wide. So I would say to give this beauty some space. This one is $79. Some Weila. Now this looks very similar to my Proven Winners Wine and Roses Weila. The Wine and Roses gets anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 6 feet tall and wide. This one is by Monrovia. Very similar colors, the dark foliage with the pink trumpet-shaped blooms that the pollinators absolutely love. I catch hummingbirds on mine pretty often. When I'm working in the garden beds, I hear them buzzing by. And this one here is the dark Horse Weila by Monrovia. It says it has vibrant blooms, dramatic foliage, and it likes full sun. And this variety looks like it's compact at 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Hardy in zones 4 through 8, down to -30 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. $42.98. Here's a really pretty Monrovia shrub that I have in my garden. It is the Semfalse spirea. And look at this. This is the new growth, also the spring color, because it's all new growth in spring. This is what the shrub looks like. Shades of pink and apricot and yellow. Just really beautiful. Chartreuse. It's stunning. This is a showstopper when it's in bloom, or when it starts to leaf out in the spring. And even after this new growth starts to fade, you still have this really beautiful fern-like foliage in this green. And then it will send up plumes of white flowers that almost look like tiny little pearls. It is a really pretty shrub. Now, something I will say is that it does send out runners. So you have to keep on top of the runners and pulling them, or else the shrub can really kind of sort of take over a space. But for me, it hasn't been a problem. I find that the runners are really easy to pull out and share with friends who might want them. So here we have the Semfalse spirea, Sorbaria sem. It likes full to part sun. It has dramatic foliage, really beautiful foliage, multi-season beauty. And that is true because, again, it has that really beautiful, colorful new foliage. Then it goes green, then it gets bloom spikes, just really long season of interest. It likes, water when the top 2 inches of soil is dry. It blooms spring through summer, hardy in zones 2 through 11, so very hardy, down to -50 to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it is moderate growing, reaching 4 to 6 feet tall and wide. And this one here is $46.98. Here's another sale that's going on here at my store that runs through Memorial Day weekend, and it is the hanging baskets. Looks like they're special value, 2 for $16 on the 1.5 gallon hanging baskets. It looks like they have some begonias, the shiny or big leaf begonias in various colors. There's the ones with the green foliage as well as the dark foliage, which is really pretty. There are also some in patience and shades of red as well as white and even some petunia baskets. And look at that beautiful wall fountain. It's by Allen and Roth, which is a Lowe's house brand. So pretty. Look at that. It says that it's 46 inches in height. Check out these adorable annual dahlias. These are so sweet. Now, generally, dahlias do have to be lifted, the tubers, at the end of the season and stored for winter. But these here, you can go ahead and just use them as an annual in your containers and they look really beautiful. This one is by Monrovia. It's called the Dahlia Nova New York Dahlia. It's a really pretty, dainty, pink shaded dahlia. So pretty. This will look great in a container paired with even some supertunias or some of the Calibrachoa mini petunias in shades of yellow and some white diamond frost euphorbia. That would look so pretty together. Well, that brings us to the end of the May inventory here at Lowe's. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock and some of the Memorial Day sales that are available. And I hope that you can find some of these plants near you. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button. And please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.